morning. Turkey signals its willingness to commit troops in the fight against Islamic State militants.
Also on Weekend Breakfast, the Prime Minister on his way home for cabinet talks as the case builds for Australian airstrikes in Iraq.
A dramatic volcanic eruption in Japan leaves dozens injured and hikers trapped on the mountain summit.
And Hawthorn celebrates its first back-to-back grand final win in a quarter of a century, crushing the Swans by 63 points.
Good morning. It's Sunday the 28th of September. I'm Liza Harvey.
And I'm Andrew Gagan. Thanks so much for your company.
The top story from ABC News this morning. The Pentagon has confirmed a fresh round of airstrikes by the US military and coalition partners against Islamic State targets in Iraq and Syria. The strikes hit 7 targets in Syria, including an IS building and 2 armoured vehicles at a border crossing in Kobani. The jihadist advance on the town has sent tens of thousands of refugees streaming into Turkey. Meanwhile, British fighter planes are on their first combat mission over Iraq since the UK Parliament authorised airstrikes against Islamic State.
America is leading the world in the fight to degrade and ultimately destroy the terrorist group known as iSIL. On Monday, our brave men and women in uniform began airstrikes against iSIL targets in Syria, and they weren't alone. I made it clear that America would act as part of a broad coalition, and we were joined in this action by friends and partners, including Arab nations. At the United Nations in New York, I worked to build more support for this coalition, to cut off terrorist financing, and to stop the flow of foreign fighters into and out of that region.
The Prime Minister is returning from the United States for cabinet talks which could see Australian forces joining the war against Islamic State terrorists in Iraq. Mr Abbott is due to touch down in Canberra this morning. His talks in the US have satisfied one of the last criteria he said needed to be met before he'd make a military commitment. That call could be made today or early this week.
A total fire ban has taken effect in southern Tasmania, the first time there's been a ban as early as September. The fire service says temperatures of up to 28 degrees and very strong winds will make any fires very difficult to control. The fire risk is expected to ease in the evening with the possibility of rain in the late afternoon.
They're expected to be about 45 to 55 kilometres an hour with gusts over 100 kilometres an hour.
Many Hobartians would remember that on the eastern shore as early as the 6th of October back in 2006 we had very serious fires then and we had a total fire ban declared for that.
Dozens of climbers have been stranded near the peak of a Japanese volcano after it erupted without warning. One woman was killed and more than 30 people are thought to have been injured after ash and rocks began spewing from Mount Ontake, 200 kilometres west of the capital, Tokyo. Planes have been diverted to avoid the ash cloud. The military has been mobilised to lead rescue efforts.
One of India's most colourful and controversial politicians has been found guilty of corruption charges in a high-profile case which lasted for 18 years. Jaya Lalitha, the Chief Minister of the southern state of Tamil Nadu, has been convicted of amassing a $10 million fortune which could not be accounted for. Security was tight around the special court in Bangalore as the judge finally delivered the verdict. She's been jailed for 4 years and fined more than $18 million.
An Egyptian court has postponed the verdict in the retrial of former President Hosni Mubarak over the killing of protesters during the uprising in 2011. Before adjourning the hearing, the judge said he and members of the prosecution team had not finished reviewing all the evidence in the case, which amounted to 160,000 pages. Mubarak, his former Interior Minister and 6 other senior security officers are accused of ordering the killings of more than 800 protesters. The final verdict is scheduled to be handed down on the 29th of November.
Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of former US President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, has given birth to a baby girl. Chelsea announced the birth on Twitter, saying she and her husband were in awe. The baby, named Charlotte, is the first child for Chelsea and her husband Mark Mazvinsky. The couple were married in 2010.
And actor George Clooney and human rights lawyer Amal Alamuddin have tied the knot in Italy. They were married at a luxury hotel in Venice overnight in front of a star-studded crowd. The couple has made little effort to hide from the paparazzi during the lead-up to the nuptials, but did keep details of the event secret. Clooney had famously vowed never to marry again following his divorce in 1993. Alamuddin has taken on some high-profile legal cases, including that of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange.
And around 300,000 people turned out in Brisbane last night for the city's annual River Fire event. The spectacular half-hour fireworks display lit up the skies between Story Bridge and West End to mark the end of the 2014 Brisbane Festival. Earlier in the day, the Australian Defence Force entertained onlookers with a Super Hornet and helicopter displays. Families jostled for the best vantage points, including at South Bank, Kangaroo Point and Victoria Bridge. Most kids who attended gave the events a big thumbs up.
Fireworks, they were really good.
What was your favourite, would you say?
I like the ones that went up and then it sparkled down.
I like the same one as Reg and it was really good.
I described the fireworks very noisy, and my favourite bit's probably at the end when the biggest fireworks wins.
Probably the twirly ones. The ones that twirled up like this tail. They were cool. It was good and it was very bright.
Partners widen the scope of airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. Refugees continue to stream across the border into Turkey. Our correspondent Matt Carney has the latest.
Also ahead, pro-democracy protests continue in Hong Kong with dozens of arrests overnight.
And later, a total fire ban today for Tasmania. We'll have more on what's expected and the precautions being taken.
Let's take a look at the satellite image. A trough and a front are causing potentially damaging winds and elevated fire danger in South Australia, Victoria and Tasmania. Another trough is generating a few showers over southeast Queensland, while a front is producing isolated showers in the far south of Western Australia. Taking a look around the states. In Queensland, light showers and gusty winds along the coast, warm in the west and north of the state. Mostly dry throughout most of New South Wales, warm in the west and south. Gusty winds in Victoria, a hot day expected before a cool change later this afternoon. In Tasmania, strong and gusty winds, showers developing in the west and south. Strong and gusty winds in South Australia ahead of a cool change in this afternoon, very hot in the northwest of the state. In Western Australia, light showers across the southwest coast, hot in the north, cooler in the south. And dry and windy across most of the Northern Territory, very hot in the west and north. And looking ahead to tomorrow's forecast for the capitals. A sunny day for Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra and Melbourne. A few early showers for Hobart. Adelaide mostly sunny. Showers for Perth. And for Darwin, partly cloudy. Now, if you thought the newspapers around the country had reached saturation point with their coverage of the grand final, yesterday we suggest you divert your eyes right now and your ears at least too, because, well, that's certainly if you're a Swans fans. Right. I'm sorry, Elijah, you have no choice.
Now let's start with Victoria's Sun, Herald Sun, which has a 16-page souvenir wrap of Hawthorn's win. Easy prey is the headline, and fair enough.
Meanwhile, further south, the Sunday Tasmanian has described the Hawks' performance as gold class. Tasmanian supporters can look forward to sharing in the team's success when it travels to Hobart and Launceston later this week for a day of celebrations.
In South Australia, the Sunday Mail writes that the win represented redemption for key defender Brian Lake, who faced calls for him to be dumped back in July.
No surprises in New South Wales, with the focus there on the football code that claimed success overnight. The Sunday Telegraph here celebrating the Bulldogs' win over the Penrith Panthers. The paper also writes that a 14-year-old girl was saved at the last minute from an arranged marriage after she and her uncle were stopped from boarding a flight to Lebanon at Sydney Airport.
The Sunday Canberra Times is also casting its eye ahead to next week's grand final when the Doggies will meet the Rabbitohs. Counter-terrorism experts have also told the paper that Australian jihadists should be given the opportunity to be rehabilitated if they ultimately regret joining conflicts in the Middle East.
Euthanasia campaigner Philip Nitschke is being investigated in every Australian state for possible involvement in the deaths of nearly 20 people, all deemed to be suicides in the past 3 years. That's the lead in today's Age.
Former Queensland Labor Minister Kate Jones is reportedly planning to go head-to-head against Premier Campbell Newman at the next state election. The Sunday Mail writes that Ms Jones will seek pre-selection for Mr Newman's seat of Ashgrove on the 6th of October.
And for flies, last night's NRL result is also being marked in Sydney's Sun Herald. The paper reports that 7 of the 15 men detained after anti-terror raids are linked to a radical street preaching group. And that's the other story splashed on their front.